Hello guys, welcome to my new video, and today we'll be looking at Crucible of Storms and we'll be looking at the best healers. This is going to be a ranking video and this is going to be a series of two videos, and I'm going to be looking at the DPS in the next couple of days as well, so have a look out for that as well. But first of all, a small disclaimer: there has been quite a few nerfs coming into Crucible of Storms in the mythic version with Restless Cabal and with Unat, so all of a sudden maybe class stacking is not going to be as engraved in the community, but overall there are definitely certain healers that have been preferred for Cabal or maybe preferred for Unat, and especially considering that Unat is a 3 healer fight, there's been certain healers, especially healers who can do quite a lot of DPS and push these extreme damage checks and help out with that. They've been very popular. So first of all, let's look at some real information, and everything that I'm going to be talking about right now, all the graphs, this is real information. These are real players doing the bosses. There's a reason why top end guilds stack certain classes. They're just better for certain fights. Keep in mind, there have been guilds who've beaten the bosses with suboptimal setups, so it's possible to do it, but we'll be looking and ranking healers. So first of all, before I'm going to be ranking healers, I have to mention, or just a small overview of what each boss does, so you can actually understand yourself why I have ranked the healers the way that I have. So first of all, Restless Cabal. In Restless Cabal fight, you'll get Promises of Power debuff, which is very similar to Shrine of the Storm's last boss debuff. This debuff is dispellable, but you don't really want to dispel it. You want to kind of maximize its uptime and only dispel it when you have to. So first of all, healers who have multiple dispels are going to be more, or at least there's going to be extra utility from them. So Mass Dispel from Priest is quite strong, on top of the fact they can also provide an additional dispel. Second of all, this Promise of Power debuff will increase the damage that you deal, and it'll reduce your HP. So this stacks to 9 stacks, and at maximum stacks your HP is going to be so little that any AoE damage is going to kill you. So all of a sudden there's going to be AoE damage coming from Crushing Doubt every minute or so. So healers who can provide absorbs damage reduction are going to be strong, because cooldowns like Luminous Barrier or Barrier, Spirit Link, Devotion Aura or Rapture on 1.5 minute cooldown is very strong, because you can use those cooldowns on people who have Promises of Power. AoE damage can happen and they might still survive, and they'll have a higher uptime of Promises of Power, they'll have more DPS, and all of a sudden they can push that damage check. And the second boss is a little bit more different, because a lot of the guilds end up using 3 healers, and all of a sudden they kind of go with one pure HPS healer to help out with the healing on the move and things like that during when the beams come out. And they also go with healers that provide a lot of damage, because like I mentioned, these boss fights, the way that Blizzard designed them, they have a huge health, they have a lot of DPS needed to beat them. So healers that can provide DPS in these world first kills is extremely important. So let's start with the ranking, and the last healer, or rank number 6, is going to be Holy Priest, and there's a reason for that. There's data that backs this up. You'll notice here this is Warcraft log information, and it shows you the HPS. The HPS is very misleading. You might as well not even look at this part at all. The only thing that you really want to check is the parses. And this is going to indicate which healer has been the most popular. And you can see here that Holy Priest overall has been the least popular healer out of all of the healers. For the first boss, like I mentioned, and to some extent, majority of the pure HPS healers are not going to be great for Restless Cabal at all, because they can't provide damage reduction, they can't create or provide a better uptime of Promises of Power debuff. So you can notice that in specific guild, this is Pieces healer composition. Again, Reddit.io did not show this properly. Pieces end up going with 2 Discipline Priest, 1 Holy Paladin and 1 Resto Shaman. They're one of the few guilds that end up using 4 healers for the first boss. Again, no Holy Priest here. You'll notice in method composition, which method end up going with 3 Discipline Priest, 1 Holy Paladin and 1 Resto Shaman. Again, no Holy Priest for the Restless Cabal. If you go to the second boss, Pieces composition end up going with 3 healers, which is what majority of guilds end up going with. You'll notice Resto Druid, you'll notice Holy Paladin, you'll notice Discipline Priest. Method end up going with a similar comp with Resto Druid and 2 Discipline Priests. You'll notice Discipline Priests are using that Throws Azeroth trait, which is like basically a Shadow Priest Azeroth trait, but it works really well on multi-target fights where their Shadow Wall Pain will do a lot of damage. But either way, you'll notice that Holy Priests have really not been preferred. There's a lot of movement. Pure HPS healers are not that strong on the first boss as well. Now let's look at number 5, and number 5 is going to be, in my opinion, Mistweaver Monk. Again, a pure HPS healer. Again, Restless Cabal doesn't really favor them, but to some extent, if we actually look at Restless Cabal, just the Cabal's composition, you'll notice that there is a decent amount of Mistweavers being chosen for the first boss, and that's mainly because there is quite a bit of tank healing needed. There are 3 tanks in this fight. There's 2 normal tanks and there's a ranged tank as well. So all of a sudden having a statue, having additional healing from that, and on top of that, the fact that Mistweavers are strong single target healers can really kind of make them decent for that fight. But where they fall down is that the revival is not that strong of a cooldown for Restless Cabal, because again, damage reduction and absorptions are way stronger. And for the second boss, you'll notice that when guilds really end up going or optimizing 3 healer fights, they really go with healers that can kind of provide more damage or do damage and heal at the same time. And on top of that, Resto Druid was very popular for that. Number 4, in my opinion, is going to be Restoration Druid. And Resto Druid, to some extent, again, the bottom 3 healers in this ranking are mainly pure HPS healers because of the first boss. Like I mentioned before, it's not like you can't do these bosses with these healers. You absolutely can, but there's a specific reason why a majority of guilds didn't use them. Now, Resto Druid has been somewhat okayish for the first boss. Some guilds end up using it, even though the utility that they provide is not that strong for the first boss at least. But for the second boss, like I mentioned, a lot of the guilds, a lot of the top end guilds like Pieces end up going with Resto Druid, Method end up going with Resto Druid, and their healing on the move on the second boss is quite strong. A lot of the guilds are kind of bringing at least one pure HPS healer, and most of the time, most of the guilds will go with the Resto Druid. So that's why I have Resto Druid in position 4. Rank 3 healer, in my opinion, that's going to be a Restoration Shaman. Now, Shaman has completely changed. If you're looking at this healing log here, where Resto Shaman's like, what, they're so bad, they're not doing any healing. You'll be mistaken heavily, because Resto Shamans are going with a completely different build right now. Majority of Resto Shamans will be going with Igneous Potential build. Igneous Potential is going to allow you to put in as many Flame Shocks as you can. Flame Shock is going to have a higher chance of giving you Lava Surge. Lava Surge is going to make your Lava Burst instant cast, because you have Igneous. Your Lava Burst is going to deal a ton of damage, and all of a sudden you're a complete support healer. You are going to be DPSing majority of the time and only healing when there's healing needed. So most likely you'll be going with Ascendance, you're going to be using your Spirit Link, you're going to be using your Healing Tide, so you're going to be a complete support healer. Very similar to what Discipline Priest, kind of the class fantasy behind Discipline. So that's why I include Resto Shamans in position number 3. It's actually funny, because when we look at the healing logs here, I can look at the DPS logs, and you can notice that Resto Shamans are doing a lot of damage. And this is the logs for all the classes in terms of the DPS that they provide in Crucible of Storms. So again, I'd love to hear your opinions about this Resto Shaman progression build, because a lot of people are going with the Igneous Potential. So basically, if you're a guild that's looking or considering 2 minutes we're gonna need an additional healing cooldown, but we might not meet the DPS check, bring a Resto Shaman with Igneous Potential. They'll do a ton of damage and they'll give you the healing cooldown when you need it. And that's what majority of guilds end up doing, not only for Crucible of Storms but also Battle of the Zalor. So the second best healer, in my opinion, is going to be Holy Paladin. And there's a big reason why Holy Paladin has become really popular. All of a sudden, every single Holy Paladin that's going to be performing in Crucible of Storms, they'll be using Glimmer of Light. Glimmer of Light has really become a popular choice, and all of a sudden, Holy Paladins are being brought into the first boss because Devotion Aura is really strong. Big damage reduction, like I mentioned, absorptions, damage reductions are really strong on the first boss. Devotion Aura is really strong. There are 3 targets or 3 tanks, so you can add Glimmer to all of them. You can provide a lot of damage because you'll be hitting the boss all the time with Crusader Strike and things like that. And their mana consumption is pretty good. So, like I mentioned, Holy Paladin is the climber spec. Glimmer of Light is the climber spec in this tier right now. Pieces composition for the last boss or the second boss, you'll notice that he brought in a Holy Paladin. There's quite a few guilds actually going with a Holy Paladin for this for the last boss, Unat. So Holy Paladin is really kind of climbing in popularity, and because of Glimmer of Light, they really are doing quite well in these world first kills. And the best healer, without a doubt in my opinion, is going to be a Discipline Priest for progression mythic content. Now, if we look at the Warcraft logs in terms of the popularity of all the bosses, you'll notice that Discipline is just by a mile the most popular. For the first boss, they're without a doubt the best healer to choose, because they have Rapture on 1.5 minute cooldown, absorptions, you can place powerful shields on everyone who has Promises of Power debuff, they can live through the AoE damage, you have Luminous Barrier if your guild cannot stack properly. If your guild can stack, you can use Barrier instead, and on top of that you have 2 dispels with Mass Dispel and Normal Magic Dispel, which makes you or allows you as a Discipline Priest to keep the Promises of Power on yourself and to provide a ton of damage. So without a doubt, the best heal on the first boss is Discipline Priest. For the second boss, it's not as engraved, or at least their utility is not as strong, but the fact that they can provide, and in Method's instance here, they brought in 2 Discipline Priests, the fact that they can provide a ton of DPS is a huge plus, and a lot of people who are watching this video who might be progressing heroic content, normal content, they might be looking at these top-end World Guild streams and they'll be like, why are they stacking 3 Discipline Priests? Discipline Priest must be the strongest healer. And they start playing Discipline Priest and they start doing this heroic content. And then they might be a little bit disappointed seeing that, hey, Resto Druid is beating me in healing. Hey, Holy Priest is beating me in healing. Why did I pick Discipline Priest? The fact that a lot of top-end guilds use this is because of their damage. Their damage is so important, and because of the way Blizzard makes these boss fights, they add huge amount of HP, damage checks are huge. Guilds are looking at dropping healers because they need extra DPS, but why drop a healer when you can have like 2 Discipline Priests and they'll provide the same damage as 1 pure DPS class? So this is why Discipline has always been a very strong progression healer. It's not that they cannot push HPS, they can provide a really good HPS, but they can provide a lot of damage. And this is why also Holy Paladins have been chosen a lot for these fights as well, because they can provide good healing on top of the good damage. So this has been my ranking of healers for Mythic Crucible of Storms. Keep in mind that if you're not doing Mythic content, you really, or if you're pushing Heroic or whatever, you can use any healer setup. For Mythic, you can still get away with suboptimal setup, but it's always going to be easier to optimize your roster if you can do that. I would love to hear your opinion on the healer list. I would love to hear your opinion on the Resto Shaman new player or Igneous potential build, whether you like that, whether you feel whether that's going to exist in the future. It's to the same extent as a Holy Paladin Glimmer of Light. Is that going to scale properly in the future as well? It might disappear. Should Blizzard introduce Glimmer of Light as a talent? Let me know, guys, and I'll upload a DPS version in the future. Thank you, and I'll see you in my next video.